Hello and welcome to this channel. Today we're going to talk about the Insta360 ONE R and how this 360-degree camera handles passive microphones with a new unofficial firmware. Stay tuned. So why vlog with a 360-degree camera? I'm a content creator and part of what I do is blogging and vlogging. I have a second YouTube channel where I do videos about travels in a camper van. This year, the Insta360 ONE R piqued my interest because it seemed like it was finally a mature enough solution for creative shots on the one hand side, and on the other hand side, for vlogging as well. Why for vlogging? Well, inside our camper van cockpit, it's not so easy to find a good solution to film while driving. In the past, I've been hand-holding my camera in front of me, and obviously that's not a great solution. It's not very safe, you shouldn't do it. And it also doesn't yield the nicest footage. So the idea I had was to use a 360-degree camera on the dashboard. That way, one lens is looking out towards the landscape and one lens is looking towards the inside, so we can talk to the camera and vlog, but at the same time show what's going on outside. And we can even do smooth pans in between, so that should work quite well in theory. The problem is the Insta360 ONE R is not known for its great internal sound quality, so obviously we need external microphones. And that's where the problems begin. The problem with the current stock firmware of the Insta360 ONE R is that the signal doesn't get amplified enough. There is no audio level gain setting inside the Insta360 ONE R with the stock firmware. So I don't know if it adjusts the level automatically or is supposed to, or the audio gain setting is a hard-coded level that is never changed, but it seems to be too low for passive microphones. So what the new firmware supposedly does is give you the option to set the audio gain level yourself, so you can adjust the parameter for the microphone you have. So which microphones are we going to test? As it turns out, the Insta360 ONE R is not only complicated in that it needs active microphones with the stock firmware, it also only accepts TRS microphones or microphones with a TRS connection. I was going to test it with my new Rode SmartLav lav mic, but as you can see, this connector has 3 rings, so that makes it a TRS microphone plug, and that doesn't work with most cameras. You need an adapter. I don't have this adapter, so I can't test this microphone, but I expect the results would be the same as with the other lav mics I have. So unfortunately, the SmartLav Plus is out of the race. We can't test it today. I do have an old Sony lav mic, and this microphone has a TRS connection. It only has 2 rings, so this connector should work. I also have a Boya microphone, also a lav mic, which I don't like because it has such a long cable and that always creates a mess, so I try to avoid using this one. As you can see, the connector has 3 rings. That also makes it a TRS connector, but this one has a switch to switch it between TRS and TRS, which is pretty smart for a microphone of this price class. Those are the 2 lav mics we're going to test. And then we have 2 shotgun microphones. First, we have the Rode VideoMicro, which is listed as a compatible microphone on the Insta360 website. And I also have an older, no name. It looks very similar. It probably doesn't have the same quality as the Rode, but we're also going to test this one. And then finally, we have the Rode Wireless Go kit, which is a wireless microphone kit made with YouTubers in mind. This is the receiver, so this goes into the camera or your recorder, and this is the transmitter, which has a microphone inside. You can also plug in another microphone. I really like this kit for the price. It works very well, and they are active microphones, and so this is the only one of these microphones that are supposed to work with the stock firmware. Let's find out if that's true. Let's test all these microphones with the stock firmware. I'm switching on the Insta360 ONE R. As a first step, I will just record myself with the internal microphone of the Insta360 ONE R so that you see what that sounds like. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. This is the first test with the internal microphone of the Insta360 ONE R with the stock firmware. So to test any other microphone, I will have to use the official Insta360 ONE R microphone adapter. This little thing goes into the USB-C port of the Insta360 ONE R, and then you can connect microphones using a normal microphone jack. So first we're going to use the Sony lav mic. There's a little microphone icon here, so that's how you know that the external microphone has been recognized. If I unplug, the icon goes away. Now let's see what kind of output we get. I'll try to keep the camera at approximately the same position as before. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. This is the test with the stock firmware and the Sony lav mic. Does this work? Probably not. Next up, the Boya lav mic. Oh god, what a mess. It's been recognized. The setting is currently off smartphone. I would have expected that to be the TRS setting. And as you can hear, the TRS setting does not work even though the camera showed the microphone symbol. So for some strange reason it recognizes that there is a microphone connected but will not record any audio. And this is the test with the stock firmware and the Boya lav mic, this time with a switch on the microphone at the camera position. Does that change anything? We will see. So we're done with the lav mics. Next up, we're testing the shotgun mics. We'll start with our no-name shotgun mic and see how it does. Testing, testing. This is the test with the stock firmware and the no-name shotgun mic. Does this work or not? We will find out in a second. Next up, the Rode VideoMicro, which is the officially supported microphone according to the website at Insta360. Let's see if there's any difference between this and the no-name shotgun mic. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. This is the test of the Rode VideoMicro with the stock firmware. Does this work or not? Last but not least, the Rode Wireless Go kit. So this is an active microphone. So first we need to switch on the kit. Then the receiver will connect to the transmitter. Put the transmitter on my collar. The receiver goes onto the Insta360 and we'll plug it in. There's also a level setting at the transmitter, so you can set your gain on the transmitter of the Rode Wireless Go. Currently the setting is at its highest position. We'll leave it there and we'll test the other two afterwards. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. This is the test of the Rode Wireless Go kit with the receiver setting, the audio gain setting on the receiver at its highest setting. Now we're at the lowest setting. And now we're at the medium setting. Medium setting, high setting, low setting. So, conclusion with the stock firmware. By the way, my stock firmware at the moment is version number 1.1.43 in September 2020, in case you're wondering and watching this video later. In general, we can say that the lav mics have a slight advantage because they're just closer to the body than a shotgun mic, and therefore the level was a little bit higher than with the shotgun mics. However, both the shotgun mics and the lav mics had such a low audio level that I would consider them unusable with the current stock firmware of the Insta360 ONE R. With the Boya lav mic you need to be a little bit careful because this microphone was recognized as a microphone by the Insta360 ONE R in both settings, in both the camera setting and the smartphone setting, but it only worked in the camera setting. That is because the camera setting switches it to TRS, which is what the Insta360 ONE R expects. And with the smartphone setting on the Boya Lav mic, you will not have any audio in your file. So be careful if you do decide to film with the Boya Lav mic. The Boya Lav mic also had slightly higher levels than the Sony Lav mic, but the difference was so small as to not matter in real life. Both shotgun microphones, unfortunately, were unusable. The audio level was so low that you couldn't really use them in real life. Even if you boost the audio gain in post, you will have a lot of noise, it won't sound good, and you're better off sticking to the internal microphone of the Insta360 ONE R. Strangely enough, again, the no-name shotgun mic had slightly higher levels than the Rode VideoMicro, but again, the difference was so small that it wouldn't matter in real life. As expected, the Rode Wireless Go kit worked out of the box. That is simply because it's the only active microphone in this test. It's only one of two active microphones I have. The second one is the Rode VideoMic NTG, which is the microphone that is mounted above me and that is recording me right now. And that microphone works as well. I tried it briefly, but I didn't want to include it in this test as a microphone of that size makes absolutely zero sense on a small camera like the Insta360 ONE R. So with the stock firmware, until there is an official update, a stable update, this is the only microphone I can currently recommend. It works with the Insta360 ONE R at the highest gain setting on the receiver. It was peaking a little, it was very loud, so I would recommend this microphone and the medium gain setting on the receiver to be used with the stock firmware on the Insta360 ONE R. After discovering these problems with passive microphones, and especially since discovering that a recommended microphone from the Insta360 website, the Rode VideoMicro, doesn't work properly, I wrote to Insta360 and they responded by sending me an unofficial firmware version that is supposed to fix the problems I've discovered here, and that's what we're going to test out now. The way the update works is you simply connect your Insta360 ONE R to a computer, you download the firmware and you put the file onto the camera, onto the SD card in the main directory. Don't put it into any subfolder because the camera won't find it there, and also make sure that it retains its original name. Some browsers like to rename or unpack files that they download. Don't let it do that. Make sure that it has the original name, otherwise the camera won't be able to find it. Once it's on the SD card, you simply switch on the camera and it should initiate the firmware update. Let's see if that works. Okay, so the screen reads checking firmware. So the camera has recognized that there's a new firmware on the SD card. Let's see what happens, or if I end up with a bricked ONE R. I hope I won't. That would be really bad for the outcome of this video. Still checking the firmware. It's either very thorough or there's something wrong with my file. Now the screen went blank. I don't know if that's a good sign, but I don't dare to move right now. Apparently the update is done. Let's check the firmware version now. Camera info. Okay, now we are on version 11.1.22, so it's definitely a different version. What's different now is that if you swipe to the left, up here you have this little folder icon, and here you can see there's a decibel setting. That's the audio gain. That's a setting you don't have with the stock firmware for whatever reason. You can adjust this to any value you like, but the instructions I've received from Insta360 said that I should keep it at 24 decibels. So that's what we're going to do. And now we're going to run our test again. Testing 1, 2, 3. Just like before, we're going to start with a test with the internal microphone with a new unofficial firmware. What was the version again? I don't remember. You have to go back a little in the video if you want to know. And then we'll run through the same sequence as before. Let's start with the Sony Lav mic. Testing 1, 2, 3. This is the test of the Sony Lav mic and the new unofficial firmware. Testing 1, 2, 3. Next up, the Boya lav mic. We're gonna skip the test with the setting at smartphone. We already know that that doesn't work. Testing 1, 2, 3. This is the test of the unofficial firmware with the Boya lav mic and the gain level at 24 decibels. Then we have the no-name shotgun mic. Yeah, and here is a problem that this new firmware version has. I hope you can see this. I just went back in to check if the decibel setting is still the same, and it's not. It dropped back to 0. It does this frequently, and it does it for no good reason at all. It will do it when rebooting the camera or when waking up from standby mode, but not always. Sometimes it keeps its value and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it will lose the value when you replug a new microphone, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it will lose the value just because, and there's no explanation for it. I reported this to Insta360. They said they're sorry about it, but they don't have a date for a newer version, a more stable version. So unfortunately, this makes this firmware a little bit difficult to use, to say the least. I will set this back to 24 dB. Testing 1, 2, 3. This is the test with the unstable new unofficial firmware, and we're testing the no-name shotgun mic. Now we'll go to the officially supported microphone that didn't work with the stock firmware, the Rode VideoMicro. We'll plug it in and we'll check our gain level. Again, it's back down at 0. That is really, really annoying. Let's run the test before our parameter jumps back down to 0. Testing 1, 2, 3. This is the test with the unofficial firmware and the Rode VideoMicro and the decibel gain setting of 24. Okay, then there's only one more to go, and that is the wireless Go kit. In general, it's really difficult to handle microphones in 360-degree cams because you can always see the microphone. It's floating in space. It looks a bit stupid, but less so with the wireless Go than with others. So let's test if this is still working. We will check our dB gain because otherwise we will be at 0 again. Yes, okay. Okay, testing. This is the Rode Wireless Go kit with the gain setting on the receiver at the lowest setting and the new unofficial firmware. Now we will up the level at the receiver to the medium setting. This is the medium setting at the receiver of the Wireless Go kit. Does this still work, or is it now peaking? Because this is still the new firmware with the gain setting. And now we're at the highest setting on the receiver of the Wireless Go kit with a new firmware and the 24 dB gain setting. And we're done. So what did we find out? Well, the firmware works in general. The audio gain level setting is very useful, and you can use passive microphones with the Insta360 ONE R. The lav mics now had generally good levels at around -12 decibels. That is probably due to them being quite close to the body, and so they can be used with this new firmware. The shotgun mics, on the other hand, are much further away from the body, from the speaker, and so the levels are still very low even with this new firmware. Adobe Premiere was showing levels of around -20 decibels for both these microphones, with the Rode VideoMicro being a bit below -20 and the no-name shotgun mic being a bit above, but both levels are quite low and you would have to boost them in post in order for them to be usable. The wireless Go kit is still a great option with the new firmware. It still worked, and the medium setting was quite nice now at around -3 to -6 decibels. There might be some peaking in loud environments, and you might want to consider using the lowest setting on the receiver, which is still at acceptable levels. However, you cannot use the highest gain setting on the receiver of the Wireless Go anymore with the new firmware, because then the level was just too loud overall. It was peaking all the time and not just occasionally. So overall, we can say that The new firmware, the unofficial firmware, does improve the situation with the Insta360 ONE R and passive microphones. You can actually use them and they work acceptably well. Unfortunately, it's no kind of fun due to the many glitches of this firmware. So while the new firmware solves the problem with passive microphones, unfortunately it's not stable enough and I can't recommend it. The dB gain parameter keeps jumping back to 0. It does this all the time for no reason that I could find, and there's no way to get rid of this behavior. So in real life, this would be completely unusable unless you want to check the parameter every time before you press the shutter button, and you will have to check it every time because, like I said, there's just no pattern. It will jump back to 0 whenever it wants to, and it wants to quite often. Another annoying thing I found with the new firmware is that it will default to photo mode when rebooting. I don't know if anyone ever used an action cam or a 360-degree cam of this size to take pictures. It's not what I would use it for, and I really don't want it to default to photo mode. In fact, I want it to stay in the mode it was in before rebooting. And last but not least, it doesn't seem stable overall. The camera froze on me with all kinds of noises and a spectacular display on the screen. It almost led me to believe that I had bricked the camera, but after a reboot it was fine again, but it just stopped working that one time, so it's not that stable. All in all, I have to say, unfortunately, this firmware is not ready for production use. I did report my findings to Insta360 and they are very friendly and communication with them is really good, but they said they can't give me a release date for a new updated firmware that is also stable, but they said they would expedite the process, whatever that means. So unfortunately, my verdict is that yes, this unofficial firmware improves things with passive microphones, but no, you can't use it in the real world. It just is not stable enough. All it does at this point is show us that the device itself is capable of working with passive microphones, and once there is a stable firmware version, there should be no more problem using those. Currently, I can't recommend the upgrade. If you want to try anyway, just write an email to Insta360. Like I said, they're really friendly and they will send you the unofficial firmware file. You can download it and upload it to your camera, and you can also go back to the stock firmware without any problem if you decide that it's not stable enough for you. So those were my findings. I hope they were somewhat helpful to you, even if the conclusion isn't what we were all hoping for. We will have to wait a while longer to use our passive microphones with the Insta360. For now, I will not be using it as a vlogging cam, unfortunately. I did install a GoPro mount that is compatible with the Insta360 yesterday in the camper van, and I tried out the panning motion already from the inside to the outside, and I think that will work quite well and will look quite cool. But it will be without sound, and I will have to continue recording vlogs with a different camera. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. Thumbs up if you liked the video and subscribe if you want to see further videos like this. I hope to see you next time, and bye bye.